Welcome to Ballsy, the podcast where I interview successful artists and creators, and I look at the balls to sell their art and turn their practice into a profitable business. As a former entrepreneur turned artist, I realized that being an artist is basically like running a false art, and you, the artist, are the CEO. I talk to artists about their businesses, talk real numbers, throw hacks, tools and tricks, and how they were ballsy enough to make that their career.
Welcome to Ballsy. You clearly have had the balls to sell some art. Everybody, I would like to introduce you to Curt. And how do I pronounce it? Hammersley?
Hammerly.
And it sounds like a good sculptural name, Hammerly.
Yeah, it's a funny thing to make ceramics with.
Right. I feel like you should be working in steel or something like that.
Something like that. But this is how it ended up. That's actually a good story. Is when I first started, I was thinking of either doing blacksmithing, glass blowing, woodworking, or ceramics. But ceramics has the easiest barriers of entry because there's so many community studios that teach classes that you can just hop into on a whim. I went the ceramics route because it was easy at the beginning.
You know, it's the path of least resistance. They say that's
Absolutely.
how it often works. I've taken a wheel throwing class or two in my life. I was not particularly successful.
I liked it. I had fun with it. I don't do it too much anymore, but yeah, that's how I started. Everything was thrown on the wheel.
So your work is actually super unique and interesting and so obviously this podcast is going to be more focused around the business, the nuts and bolts, the marketing, like how you turned what I assume was a hobby at one point and what were those inflection points that you're like, I can do this as a job. But before we set that, let's kind of frame like what your art is, what it looks like, because it's super unique and really interesting. And that way people can go look at it while they're listening.
So I make porcelain from slip cast molds. So you take liquid clay, you pour it into a plaster mold, and it gives you a form of whatever that mold is. I put a little bit of a twist on it. I went to design school and then I ran a fabrication lab at the university for 10 years after I graduated. And I brought this twist of 3D modeling and 3D printing to the creation of those molds. So all of my forms are designed in the computer at first, and then the molds themselves are designed, and then I use 3D printing technology to bring those molds into real life and then finally make the stuff out of clay.
That's why yours has very kind of like super geometric.
My goal is to make stuff that other people can't on the wheel because of geometrical perfection or symmetry or just like hard edges and things like that. My whole goal is to make stuff that other people can't using my process.
Yeah, I mean it shows. It's really unique and interesting and different. Found you, I assume, as many other people have via Instagram, and the stylistic nature of it, and also just all your like process videos and like it's like a very intimate look inside your studio.
Yes, and that's the other part of my process is I share everything because there are certain barriers of entry that I'm past that are hard for other people to jump into. So I'm not too worried about getting copied outright.
And by the way, I hate to break it, imitation is the best form of flattery, right? It shows that you've got something that's really cool and that you've got a market. It tends to be like, yeah, sure, there's knockoffs of everything.
Absolutely.
So it's
people using my same process and I follow them closely, but none of them are anything that I'm concerned about surpassing me. That's a weird thing to say because it's art. It's not a competition. We are all in our own lane. As long as someone doesn't come out with my exact same mug with my exact same glazes for a lower price point, that would be a problem, but I don't see that happening.
And so you design your own glazes and everything as well, huh?
Yeah, and that's the other side of the barrier of entry is I have a very expensive gas computer controlled kiln that was built in Amsterdam and shipped over here. And I make all my own glazes, and I've spent the last 10 years learning the chemistry of that and how the different glazes interact and how to fire them. And so there's just all these levels to my practice that makes it challenging for other people to copy.
And the fact that you're willing to lift your kimono and let everybody behind is the testament to that, right? So
it's fun. Bring it on.
So how did you first, obviously you took a wheel throwing class and that was exciting. How did you get from there? I assume it was a hobby when you started.
Obviously, so actually
worked a little bit.
Sorry, go ahead, finish.
I was going to say you worked in fabrication, so you clearly had some experience around that.
Yeah. So actually, I got started because I was riding my bike to work at the university one morning and got hit by a car and broke my neck and 7 ribs, fractured or ruptured my kidney, spleen, liver, and had a collapsed lung. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital and 3 months in a traction halo for the neck break. And when I got out of that neck brace, I took a pottery class because I couldn't go lift weights. I couldn't ride my bike. I was like, dying to get out of the house and do something, but I couldn't do any of the things I used to do. And there's a pottery studio right next to my house, so I took a class. Never really intended to take another one. And then my sketchbook started getting filled with ideas. And then I learned about mold making and how people use plaster to make molds for clay. And very quickly, my desire became taking these 10 years, 15 years of experience of 3D modeling and 3D printing and take that kind of disappointing end result of plastic and turn it into an end result that's actually a material that everyone has a 3D printer these days. You print shit out of plastic, you show it to your friends, it's cool, but it's like the shitty plastic is not a final product.
Right. You don't want to touch it.
Yeah, you don't want to touch it, you don't want to eat off of it. So my goal was to take this technology that at the time was pretty new. Everyone knows what a 3D printer is now, but 10 years ago, it was a lot more niche. I say that like it was a really long time ago, but it really wasn't. But it was a lot more niche back then, and finding clever ways to, or finding a methodology for turning those 3D models into 3D prints and then finally into clay was what I got hooked on. And luckily, like you said, it was a little bit unique. There were opportunities to capitalize on that via Instagram and show people stuff they'd never seen.
Now, when you made that transition, did you, when you started making these things, did you say to yourself, "Oh, I'm going to sell these," or were you just making them because it was cool to make them and you liked what you were doing and you were like, there was an interesting technique here?
I didn't sell my first piece until I had 12,000 Instagram followers. I had a full-time job at the
Wow.
university. I had every intention of staying at that job until I hit my 30-year pension, and then I would retire and do something cool with my time. So I started posting on Instagram just for fun. I had been a lurker following other artists for a very long time and was like, hey, if they're sharing what they're doing, I could do that too. That would be fun. So I started putting up pictures and I started putting up videos and people started latching onto it. And then eventually got to this point where people were like, are you ever going to sell any of this shit? I don't know. What is your swearing policy on this?
No, go ahead. Swear all you want.
Okay, good to know. But it was like, people were like, are you going to sell any of this shit or are you just going to tease us here? And I was like, I've never considered that. But when you start doing art or pottery, any kind of art form, and you are really into it, your house just starts getting filled with shit. So you just have like your art everywhere. And people were asking, so I was like, I have some time, I have some extra time. I have this full-time job, but I could get some of this stuff out of my house. So I made an Etsy at that point and sold a couple pieces in the first month. That was really exciting. And as the year went on,
no better feeling in the world than
oh yeah, no better feeling. Like when the first person bought something that I made with my hands, and they were not my mom, not my friends, like someone that didn't know me, put their money out and said, I want this thing that you have made. Here's money. It was like, holy shit, this is the most exciting fucking thing on the planet. It was amazing. And it was like, I worked for the university. I helped students with their work. I helped them build stuff on all of our fabrication equipment, but I designed this and then I built it and it is a finished product you can hold in your hand and someone's giving me money. Yeah, it's the most addicting thing I've ever experienced in my life.
It's crack-esque in its excitement.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.